This 3-minute video comes to you from Cheering, an organisation that works with mothers and babies in refugee camps in Greece. It explains why breastfeeding matters right now in an emergency. This poster comes from the World Health Organization. It explains why it's important to breastfeed babies during the recent COVID epidemic. What is an emergency? While much of the world is worried right now about COVID-19, and that's an obvious emergency, refugees live in an ongoing state of emergency. In an emergency, people lack basic necessities. There are risks around things like reliable power sources and clean water. The risk of infection goes up, and items like infant formula get very expensive or disappear completely. Priorities in an emergency are health, food, and apparently toilet paper. When there's an emergency, those in power may give advice that is not always realistic. For example, in the recent COVID-19 epidemic, we were told to use hand sanitizer, wear a face mask, and get tested. Many of these things were not possible in the refugee camps or even in mainstream American cities. Feeding infant formula isn't safe in an emergency either. We're told we have to boil the water, sterilize the bottles, read the instructions, which may not be in our own language, refrigerate it, etc., etc., when in reality, many of these things are not available to poor families who need to feed their babies. Breastfeeding is really critical when there are other health basics missing. For example, if we don't have access to vaccinations, or if there are no antibiotics or medicine available to us, when there are few doctors around, and maybe we have no family support because we're separated from our families or family members have died. In all these examples, it's really important to breastfeed to keep the baby as healthy as possible. In the short term, breastfeeding prevents acute outcomes. When babies are not breastfed, they get sick. That means babies and their families have to go to the hospital or the clinic where it's possible to be exposed to other infections, and they're also burdening a healthcare system which is already being stressed. If babies get hungry, mothers may feed foods that are not good for young children, like cow's milk with sugar, because they don't have access to formula. All of this leads to more sick babies. Even more important, breastfeeding actually prevents illness. The antibodies in the mother's milk go direct to the child and protect them against disease. This includes all kinds of viruses. There are international guidelines for those who manage emergencies. The best advice comes from this poster made by UNICEF and partners. Whether you're in an emergency or any kind of situation with a new baby, give baby only breast milk for the first 6 months of life.